Here is one of my Singer 237s in my portable Singer treadle. And you also see several handheld stitchers here. This is the Dexter, which is vintage, made in America, and happens to be the needles that go with it. And the needles are hard to find, so you have to think about that if you're looking for a Dexter. This is an old Singer Mini from around the 60s. And on this one, you have to make sure you use a spool of thread that takes up the whole spindle. This one does not work on bobbins. It works on thread spools. This is dual duty XP thread. And after trying a lot of different vintage and new spools and threads, that's the best thread for even tension on the Singer Mini. These are the Sun brand vintage from China. I still think these are the best overall for a manual stitcher without batteries. They're consistent, they make a great stitch, they just keep working. This is the Singer Stitch So Quick. And the reason I'm talking about these today, I have been evaluating all of my larger machines for noise. I pieced a quilt together last night on my 1916 66-1 red-eye hand crank last night, and it took about 3 hours to piece the quilt together, and way too much noise for the dog. As you may have seen by my videos on the dog is sick right now. So I'm actually looking at handheld stitchers to use for a while myself for patchwork and piecing, because they're the quietest and I can take her where she needs to go. Part of the frustration when you have a sick dog is like she has to go out every 2 hours. Sometimes I have to hand feed her. You know, and with the handheld stitchers, it's easy to just put down your project and do what you have to do. But also, someone had asked for a very quick overview on how to use these. They're all basically the same. The Dexter takes I think it's either 7/8 of an inch or it might be 1 inch vintage spool. So if you pick up a Dexter, you want to also look for some old spools the same size, and you'll have to rewind the thread onto there. It's about the only size the Dexter takes. And I already mentioned the spool and the thread on the Mini. These are also great because they work off of bobbins. And as I've said before, you can wind all your threads onto bobbins and use those. The Singer Stitch So Quick and the person had asked about the Sunbeam are the same way. Don't buy the Smart Tech, which I've gone over before. In fact, on the Dexter, these are vintage spools of silk thread, the exact size of the Dexter. I have about 100 vintage wooden spools, and I went through and made sure there are 17 here that are the exact size that'll go on the Dexter. So you could do the same thing, and then I'll just have to rewind thread onto here when I run out of thread. But getting back to the modern ones, these work on batteries, so the first thing you want to do is install batteries. Most of them, it's on the bottom, and you have to read the inside casing as to how the AA batteries go in there. Some of them also come with a DC adapter. They will come with a spool pin, which if you use a spool of thread instead of the bobbin, you want to make sure there's a spring underneath the bobbin. You want to make sure you don't lose that spring because it has to go under the thread spool as well. So this is the way they'll come out of the box, with a bobbin that's wound. And to thread it, it's very simple. Most of them have one thread guide here. Then you go through in between the two tension discs here. Underneath, behind the needle is another thread guide that you go through, and then you thread them from the back to the front. So this is threaded and ready to go. And what I'm going to do today, I'm going to put the camera down, and I have been making tree jackets for my trees, and also some of my paintings need covers. When I work in oil pastel, the surface is delicate, and so I want to use tarp fabric to make like bags or covers for the paintings. So let's put the camera down right here. Here's a piece of tarp fabric. Now remember, these are all chain stitchers, and the beauty of this, especially with my trees, is that they only need wind protection if they're young or it's winter time. So what I can do, here's some tarp fabric, and I'm going to avoid the grommets. I have a grommet here, so I'm going to avoid that. But what I can do, because this is a chain stitch, is in the spring, unlock the end of the seam, pull the whole chain stitching out, and reuse the tarp fabric. So it's threaded. I've got thread in it. I've got the fabric under the needle plate, kind of stiff fabric. Now this one, in my first long middle of the night video on this one, it is a little bit to get used to get the fabric under the needle, but this works very well. My one drawback with the battery operated ones is the noise, but that's only because of me and my dog. So I can take these outside and do the tree jackets outside. But anyway, here we go. So once you get your fabric under there, light to medium weight fabrics. Don't try to hem jeans with these. And then on the top of most of them is a power button. And I think on all, you'll have to check, but some of them back is locked and forward is on. And the biggest challenge is just staying straight. But like I said, the larger sewing machine is in the way, and this fabric is very stiff, and it's bigger than normally if I were doing patchwork or something. So whatever you're making, and you can use these on some papers to make cards and stuff. Another idea, I'm making a quilt for my dog that is appliqué. I don't want to use fusible interfacing. I have some, but you know, I end up ironing it to the wrong place and everything. I'm going to turn under the edges of the appliqué pieces and then go along the edges with chain stitching, and then probably machine stitch over that when I apply it to the background. But anyway, so you've gotten to the end of your stitching. You turn this button or wheel so that the needle goes all the way up, which is right about there. And then I have a pencil here. I might be able to do it with a pencil. You want to, usually I use a seam ripper or an awl. You want to pull the thread out forward. And I forgot my glasses, so just pretend I'm doing this. Pull the thread out forward like that, and then you can cut it, lift the little finger plate up, and pull your fabric out. And what that does is lock your seam. And what you want is the last piece of thread coming through the last loop. and then your seam is locked. In my case, in the spring, I then undo that, pull the top thread, and the whole stitching comes out. So there is a quick overview on the basic functions of the battery-operated handheld stitchers.